the silent architect. The evening light filtered through the tall windows of their penthouse apartment, casting long shadows across the drafting table where Priya Sharma hunched over detailed blueprints. At 40, her elegant fingers were steady as she made final adjustments to what would become Horizon Builder's next landmark project in Bangalore. Though her name wouldn't appear on any official documents, her architectural vision had shaped nearly every successful building in her husband's rapidly expanding construction empire. Still working? Arjun's voice startled her. He loosened his tie as he entered, setting down his briefcase on the marble counter. Just finishing the Lakeside Tower concepts, Priya smiled, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. I've incorporated those sustainable elements you mentioned to the investors. They'll be impressed. Arjun nodded absently, scrolling through his phone. Good. I need to wow them tomorrow. This contract could push us into the international market. Priya rose from her chair, stretching her back after hours of work. 12 years ago, she had graduated at the top of her class from the National Institute of Design. She had dreams of her own architectural firm, but when she met Arjun Sharma, a charismatic businessman with ambitious plans for a construction company, their love story quickly became intertwined with business ambitions. I've prepared those talking points for your presentation, she said, handing him a neatly organized folder. And the visual mock-ups are on your laptop. You're always so thorough, he replied, though his attention remained on his phone. The warmth that once colored his voice when speaking to her had gradually faded over the past year. Priya had noticed the subtle shifts, later nights at the office, weekend emergency meetings, the new cologne he'd started wearing. Small changes that, when pieced together, formed a picture she wasn't ready to acknowledge. The next morning, she watched him dress in his finest suit, the one she had selected for him during their anniversary trip to Milan last year. Horizon Builders had grown from a modest local contractor to one of India's most innovative construction companies, with projects now spanning across 5 major cities. Their journey had been challenging. The early years of financial uncertainty, the skeptical investors, the competitors who tried to undermine them. Remember Mr. Kapoor? Priya asked, handing Arjun his coffee. He told us we'd never secure the riverfront development. Now he's calling for partnerships. Arjun took the cup without meeting her eyes. We've come a long way, he said simply. That evening, Priya attended the company's quarter-end celebration at the newly completed Horizon Tower. She moved through the crowd of employees and business partners, accepting congratulations meant for her husband. Though she held no official position, many industry insiders knew her influence on the company's aesthetic direction. Your design elements on the East Wing are revolutionary, commented Rohan Mathur, a respected urban planner. Will you be taking lead on the upcoming Chennai project? Before she could answer, Arjun appeared beside her, his hand possessively on her waist. Priya's contributions are invaluable, he said smoothly. But we've brought in Tanvi Malhotra as our head designer. For Chennai, Priya maintained her smile despite the sting. Tanvi was a recent graduate, barely 30, whose modern approach had caught Arjun's attention at an industry conference. Later that night, as they rode home in silence, Priya finally voiced what had been building inside her. You didn't even consult me about Chennai. Arjun sighed, his gaze fixed out the window at the city lights. It's time we brought fresh perspectives to the company. You should enjoy the success we've built. Take some time for yourself. The words hung between them, their meaning clear. After years of shared dreams and collaborative work, he was gradually edging her out, not just from the company she helped build, but from their shared life. As they entered their apartment, Priya noticed a text notification illuminate Arjun's phone on the counter. The name Tanvi flashed briefly with a message she couldn't read. Arjun quickly pocketed the device, but the damage was done. In that moment, Priya understood that the shadows in their relationship had grown longer than the light that remained. The fracture. The invitation to Horizon Builders' annual charity gala arrived in Priya's hands like any other year, embossed gold lettering on cream cardstock, promising an evening of philanthropy and networking. What made this year different was Arjun's sudden insistence that she attend alone. "I'll meet you there," he explained over breakfast, not meeting her eyes. "I need to finalize some details with the Bangalore team first." Priya nodded, sipping her tea thoughtfully. Over the past 3 months, these separations had become routine. Her architectural input on company projects had dwindled to occasional consultations, despite the fact that her innovative sustainable designs had become Horizon's signature selling point. That evening, she arrived at the Grand Meridian Hotel in a midnight blue sari, her mother's diamond earrings catching the light. Colleagues greeted her warmly, many expressing how they missed her presence in the office. Priya smiled graciously, though each comment felt like salt in a wound she pretended didn't exist. "Mrs. Sharma, you look stunning as always," said Nikhil Desai, Horizon's chief financial officer and one of the few who knew how instrumental she had been in the company's early financing. "Arjun not with you?" "He's arriving separately," she replied, scanning the crowded ballroom. When she finally spotted her husband across the room, her breath caught. Arjun stood near the bar, leaning close to a young woman with sleek modern glasses and a bold red dress. Tanvi Malhotra, the new design director, laughed at something he said, her hand resting casually on his arm. The intimacy between them was unmistakable. Priya turned away, colliding with a waiter. Wine splashed across the marble floor, drawing momentary attention. When she looked back, Arjun was watching her, guilt briefly flashing across his face before he schooled his expression and approached her with Tanvi in tow. "Priya, you remember Tanvi," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "She's just presented our concept for the Singapore expansion." "Singapore?" Priya questioned, her composure intact despite the turmoil inside. "That was my project. I've been developing those plans for months." Tanvi shifted uncomfortably, but Arjun merely shrugged. "We needed something more contemporary, more daring." The board approved Tanvi's design unanimously yesterday. The betrayal was professional and personal, intertwined like the double helix of DNA. That night, after returning to separate rooms in their shared home, Priya opened her laptop and found emails detailing meetings she'd never been invited to, decisions made without her knowledge, and a gradual erasure of her contributions. The confrontation came 3 days later when she discovered hotel receipts in Arjun's jacket, local reservations despite claimed overnight business trips. "Is it serious with her?" Priya asked, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. Arjun didn't bother denying it. "She understands the vision I have for Horizon's future," he replied, as if that explained everything. "And what about our vision? Our marriage? The 12 years I've dedicated to building this life with you?" His silence was answer enough. The divorce proceedings were swift and clinical. Arjun's lawyers argued that Priya had no official position at Horizon Builders, despite her years of unpaid work. They offered a settlement that amounted to little more than hush money, a fraction of what she had helped build. "You should take it," advised Deepak Mehra, the family lawyer who had known them since their wedding. "Fighting him will be expensive in public." But it wasn't about the money. It was about the recognition of her worth, her contributions, her talent. "I designed those buildings," she said quietly. "My creativity, my ideas, my overnight work sessions, while he slept. And now he wants to pretend I was just a supportive wife?" The final meeting took place in a sterile conference room overlooking the city skyline, a view dominated by 3 prominent buildings she had designed. Arjun arrived with his corporate attorney and a prenuptial agreement Priya had signed when they were young and equally ambitious. "Be reasonable, Priya," Arjun said, sliding the settlement papers across the table. You're entitled to our personal assets. But Horizon was always my company. Priya studied her husband's face, the man she had loved, supported, believed in. Now a stranger wrapped in expensive suits and colonial ambitions. "Keep your settlement," she said finally, standing up. "I don't want anything that reminds me of you." She walked out of the building carrying only her portfolio of designs, the ones Horizon had rejected, the innovative concepts Arjun had deemed too risky. Outside, monsoon rains washed the city streets clean, and Priya Sharma, no longer defined by her husband's name or company, allowed herself to cry for the last time. That evening, she received a call from Zara Irani, her former university roommate, who now ran a successful venture capital firm specializing in sustainable businesses. "I heard what happened," Zara said without preamble. "That's his loss. But I've been watching your designs transform Bangalore's skyline for years. Have you ever considered what you could build if you weren't standing in someone else's shadow?" The question hung in the air like a blueprint waiting to be realized. Blueprint for redemption. The one-bedroom apartment in Indiranagar was nothing like the luxury penthouse Priya had left behind, but the eastern exposure filled the small space with morning light perfect for drafting. 6 weeks after walking away from her marriage, she had converted the living room into a makeshift studio, pinning concept sketches to every available wall. "You've been busy?" Zara commented, carefully navigating between drawing tables covered with architectural renderings. She set down 2 cups of chai and examined the nearest design, a revolutionary community center built around existing trees, the structure embracing rather than replacing nature. "These are incredible, Priya. Genuinely groundbreaking." Priya rubbed her tired eyes. "They're just concepts, dreams, really." "Dreams backed by 15 years of expertise," Zara countered. "Look, I didn't come here just to admire your work. I have a proposition." She explained that her venture capital firm, Green Futures, was looking to invest in sustainable architecture, specifically firms that could revolutionize urban development in overcrowded Indian cities. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. "We don't just want to fund a company. We want to create a movement," Zara explained, her eyes bright with possibility. "And you're exactly the visionary we need." That conversation became the foundation of Terraform Designs, Priya's own architectural firm focused exclusively on sustainable urban solutions. With Zara's initial investment, she rented a small office in a co-working space and hired 2 recent graduates as her team. Vikram Patel, a structural engineer with innovative ideas about water conservation, and Ananya Gupta, a landscape architect, specializing in vertical gardens. Their first project came through Zara's connections, redesigning a small tech company's headquarters to be energy neutral. The budget was modest, but Priya saw it as an opportunity to prove her philosophy, that beautiful, functional design could also heal the environment. 6 months later, the completed building was featured in Architectural Digest India, praised for its seamless integration of solar technology and living walls that reduced interior temperatures without additional cooling systems. The photos showcased Priya alongside her team, her name finally attached to her work. The article caught the attention of Samir Rathore, CEO of EcoSpaces, a mid-sized developer focused on environmentally conscious construction, and one of Horizon Builder's emerging competitors. "Your work is precisely what we've been looking for," Samir told Priya during their first meeting. "We have the financial backing, but lack the innovative design approach that could truly distinguish us in the market." His offer was straightforward. Terraform would become EcoSpace's exclusive design partner for their next 5 projects, with profit sharing rather than flat fees. It was a risk, but one that aligned with Priya's vision. As Terraform grew, adding 6 more employees and moving to larger offices, Priya found herself rebuilding more than just her career. The friendships within her team, the respect from clients who valued her expertise, the freedom to create without compromise. These elements formed a foundation stronger than what she had lost. One evening, working late with her team on a presentation, Priya overheard Vikram explaining her design philosophy to a new intern. "Mrs. Sharma doesn't just design buildings," he said earnestly. "She creates ecosystems where people and nature thrive together. That's why our waitlist keeps growing. Everyone wants that balance." The words warmed her, validating the path she'd chosen. Later that night, as she walked home through the bustling streets, Priya passed a newly completed Horizon building, one she had initially conceptualized, but Tanvi had finished. The structure was impressive but lacked soul, prioritizing flash over function. Her phone buzzed with a text from Deepak, her former family lawyer who had maintained contact. "Thought you should know. Horizon's Singapore project is facing serious criticisms for environmental impact. Board meeting called to address concerns. Arjun under pressure." Priya pocketed her phone without replying. Her ex-husband's professional challenges no longer concerned her, yet she couldn't help but recall how she had warned him about the ecological fragility of the Singapore site, advice he had dismissed along with her. The following week brought news that transformed Terraform's trajectory. EcoSpaces had secured funding to develop an entire sustainable township outside Pune, a project that would require unprecedented integration of green technology and architectural innovation. "We want Terraform to lead the entire design process," Samir explained during a dinner meeting. "But more than that, we want you as a partner, Priya, not just a contractor, an equity holder in EcoSpaces itself." The offer stunned her. "Why would you share ownership?" Samir smiled. "Because we're not just building structures, we're creating the future, and your vision is essential to that future." He slid a prospectus across the table. 15% ownership now, with options for more based on the township's success. As Priya reviewed the documents later that night, a notification appeared on her laptop. An industry newsletter announcing that Horizon Builders was seeking partnership with international firms to bolster their environmental credentials after recent setbacks. For the first time since her divorce, Priya smiled at news of her ex-husband's company. The wheels of karma were turning, and she was no longer caught beneath them. Foundations of power. The Pune eco-township broke ground on an unseasonably cool October morning. Priya stood beside Samir, both wearing hard hats emblazoned with the joint EcoSpaces Terraform logo, as the ceremonial first shovel pierced the earth. Cameras flashed, capturing the moment for industry publications and environmental journals alike. "This is just the beginning," Samir told the gathered press. "With Priya Sharma as our design partner and equity holder, EcoSpaces is redefining what sustainable development means in 21st century India." 2 years had passed since Priya walked away from her marriage with nothing but her portfolio. Now, at 42, she commanded respect not just for her innovative designs, but for the business acumen that had transformed Terraform from a 3-person startup to a 30-employee firm with a waiting list of clients seeking their sustainable solutions. The Pune project had attracted international attention. A delegation from Singapore's Urban Redevelopment Authority had visited Terraform's offices the previous month, interested in applying similar principles to their own overcrowded city-state. The irony wasn't lost on Priya. The same country where Horizon had faced environmental criticism was now looking to her for solutions. The Australians called again, Ananya reported during their weekly strategy meeting. Now Terraform's design director, she had grown from a hesitant recent graduate to a confident leader. They're offering to fly the entire executive team to Sydney to discuss the harbor revitalization project. Vikram, who had become Terraform's chief innovation officer, added, "And the government contract for the Himalayan research station is practically ours. They specifically requested your snow load distribution system." Success had changed Priya in subtle ways. The hesitation that once characterized her decisions, a result of years having her ideas second-guessed by Arjun, had been replaced by confident certainty. She had learned to trust her instincts again, both creatively and commercially. The biggest change came 3 months after the Pune groundbreaking, when Samir called an emergency board meeting at EcoSpace's headquarters. "Global Green Investments has approached us," he announced to the stunned directors. "They want to acquire a controlling interest in EcoSpaces, specifically citing our partnership with Terraform as the primary attraction." Global Green was an international conglomerate focused on environmentally responsible real estate development across Asia. Their interest represented both extraordinary opportunity and potential risk. What would this mean for our existing projects? For Terraform's exclusivity agreement? Priya asked, ever practical despite the excitement buzzing around the table. Samir smiled. "That's why I wanted you here, Priya. Global Green doesn't just want EcoSpaces. They want Terraform too, and they're prepared to make extraordinary offers to both companies." The negotiations stretched over 6 weeks. Priya enlisted Zara's expertise, determined not to repeat past mistakes of undervaluing her contributions. The final agreement was revolutionary. EcoSpaces would become a subsidiary of Global Green, with Samir remaining as regional CEO. Terraform would maintain its creative independence, but would become the primary design arm for all Global Green projects across South Asia. Most significantly, Priya's 15% stake in EcoSpaces would convert to shares in Global Green itself, making her one of the conglomerate's largest individual shareholders. Terraform would be acquired in a separate deal that made her wealthy beyond what she had ever imagined possible. "You should celebrate," Zara insisted, pouring champagne in Priya's new office. A sunlit corner suite in Terraform's expanded headquarters. From starting over at 40 to becoming a major stakeholder in an international corporation at 43. It's unprecedented. Priya sipped the champagne thoughtfully. "It feels unreal sometimes. 3 years ago, I was designing buildings that would never have my name on them. And now? Now I'm designing the future. And it's entirely mine." The Global Green acquisition made headlines across business journals. Priya's story, the architect who rebuilt her life after starting from scratch, became inspirational fodder for women's magazines and business schools alike. She gave interviews sparingly, focusing instead on expanding Terraform's capabilities and influence within the larger corporate structure. It was during a routine industry newsletter review that Priya first learned of Horizon Builders' troubles. The Singapore debacle had been followed by construction delays, cost overruns, and a high-profile lawsuit regarding structural deficiencies in their Chennai development. Arjun's leadership was being questioned by shareholders, and rumors of a potential sale circulated through industry channels. "Horizon's board has approached Global Green," Samir confirmed when Priya inquired discreetly. "They're looking for a buyer who can salvage their reputation and projects. Our CEO is considering it. Their land holdings alone would be valuable for our expansion plans." Priya maintained a neutral expression. "Who would lead the acquisition? Team if it moves forward? As South Asia Director for Design and Development, that would fall under your jurisdiction," Samir replied, watching her carefully. "Would that be a problem given your history?" Priya thought of the buildings across India that contained her unacknowledged vision, of the late nights working on presentations Arjun had claimed as his own, of walking away with nothing while he kept everything they had built together. "No problem at all," she replied calmly. "In fact, I believe I bring unique insights to the situation." That evening, she reviewed Global Green's preliminary assessment of Horizon's assets and liabilities. The company that had once seemed invincible was now vulnerable, its foundations weakened by compromised values and short-sighted decisions. When her phone rang near midnight, the international number surprised her. It was Marcus Wei, Global Green's CEO, calling from Hong Kong. "Priya, I've reviewed your portfolio and Terraform's integration plan. Extraordinary work," he began without preamble. "We're moving forward with the Horizon acquisition. I want you, to personally lead the transition team. As she hung up, Priya gazed out at the Bangalore skyline, where several of her uncredited designs stood illuminated against the night sky. Soon, those buildings would belong to a company where she held significant power. Life had come full circle in ways she could never have imagined. The cornerstone returns. The Horizon Builders' headquarters lobby had changed little in the 3 years since Priya had last walked through it. The same marble floors reflected the same carefully positioned lighting, and the receptionist still sat behind a desk she had designed to resemble flowing water. Only now, temporary global green banners flanked the Horizon logo, signaling the imminent transition of ownership. "Mrs. Sharma," the receptionist greeted her with wide eyes. "The board is expecting you in the main conference room." Priya nodded, smoothing the jacket of her tailored suit. At 43, she carried herself with the quiet confidence that came from rebuilding her life on her own terms. The elevator ride to the top floor gave her a moment to center herself. This was not about revenge. It was about reclaiming the narrative of her own story. The Global Green Acquisition team had arrived earlier, preparing the boardroom for the final signing ceremony. When Priya entered, conversations hushed momentarily, before resuming with increased energy. She greeted her colleagues professionally, accepting the deference they showed to her position as South Asia Director and lead transition executive. "The Horizon board members are on their way up," Marcus informed her, adjusting his tie. "Their CEO insisted on a private word with them before the formal proceedings." Priya nodded, arranging her documents on the polished table. She had reviewed every aspect of Horizon's business over the past month. The troubled projects, the financial missteps, the talent exodus that had followed a series of poor decisions. What had once been India's most innovative construction company had become a cautionary tale of prioritizing flash over substance. The boardroom doors opened and the Horizon contingent filed in, mostly unfamiliar faces as the board had undergone significant changes during the company's decline. And then, last to enter, came Arjun. He had aged visibly, stress etching lines around his eyes that hadn't been there 3 years ago. His confident stride faltered momentarily when he spotted Priya at the head of the table, her position of authority unmistakable. Confusion crossed his face, followed quickly by comprehension and thinly veiled dismay. "Welcome, gentlemen," Marcus began, gesturing to the seats arranged on their side of the table. "I believe most of you have reviewed the final acquisition terms. Today's meeting is largely ceremonial, but vitally important as we begin integrating Horizon's assets and personnel into the global green family." As Marcus continued his prepared remarks, Priya maintained her professional composure, though she felt Arjun's gaze repeatedly returning to her. The man who had once dismissed her contributions was now facing her as the architect of his company's future. "Before we proceed to signatures," Marcus concluded, "I'd like to invite Mrs. Sharma to outline the transition plan she has developed. As many of you know, Priya will be overseeing the integration of Horizon's projects into our sustainable development framework." Priya rose, activating the presentation screen behind her. The room darkened slightly as images of Horizon's current projects appeared alongside Terraform's proposed modifications to make them environmentally sound and economically viable. "Gentlemen," she began, her voice steady, "Horizon Builders created some of India's most recognizable structures. However, in recent years, the company has drifted from the foundational principles that once made it exceptional." She clicked through slides detailing specific projects, highlighting design flaws and missed opportunities with precision born of intimate knowledge. "Our integration plan addresses these issues while preserving the core strengths of Horizon's portfolio. We've identified key personnel to retain, projects to prioritize, and modifications necessary to align with Global Green's sustainability standards." Throughout her presentation, Priya spoke with authority and vision, never acknowledging the personal connection to the company she was effectively dismantling and rebuilding. Only when she reached the final slide, featuring the troubled Singapore, development, did she allow herself a moment of pointed specificity. This project, which has cost Horizon significantly in both reputation and legal expenses, would have benefited from the environmental impact assessment that was proposed in its early planning stages. Her eyes met Arjun's briefly. Sometimes, the most valuable expertise is the one we choose to ignore. The subtle reference wasn't lost on those who knew their history. Arjun shifted uncomfortably in his chair. When the presentation concluded, Marcus invited questions. Several board members engaged enthusiastically, clearly impressed by the thoroughness of Priya's analysis. Arjun remained silent until the formal signing began. As papers circulated for signatures, he finally approached her at the refreshment table. "I didn't know you were involved with Global Green," he said quietly. Priya poured herself a glass of water. "There's a lot you don't know about me, Arjun. That was always part of the problem." He glanced around at the gathering, now mingling as the acquisition became official. Tanvi left 6 months ago. The Singapore disaster was her design. "I'm aware," Priya replied without emotion. "Her resignation letter is in the personnel files. I reviewed." Arjun leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Is this your way of getting back at me? Taking over Horizon?" Priya set down her glass, meeting his gaze directly. "This isn't about you, Arjun. It never was. You thought I was just supporting your dream, but I was building my own. The difference is, I never needed to diminish you to elevate myself." Before he could respond, Marcus approached with several Global Green executives eager to meet the woman, whose reputation for sustainable innovation had spread throughout the industry. "Priya, these gentlemen are interested in your plans for the Chennai restoration. Perhaps you could show them the preliminary renderings." She nodded, turning away from Arjun without a backward glance. As she guided the executives toward the digital display, she heard Marcus addressing her ex-husband. "Mr. Sharma, I understand you'll be staying on as a consultant during the transition period. Mrs. Sharma will be your direct supervisor. I hope that arrangement works for you." Priya didn't hear Arjun's response, nor did she need to. The universe had balanced its accounts in ways more perfect than any revenge she could have orchestrated. She had rebuilt herself, creating something more sustainable than what she had lost. Later that evening, as the acquisition celebration continued at a nearby hotel, Zara found Priya on the terrace, gazing out at the city lights. "How does it feel?" her friend asked, joining her at the railing. "Becoming the boss of the man who once erased your contributions?" Priya smiled thoughtfully. "It feels like closure, but more importantly, it feels like a beginning." She gestured toward the skyline, where construction cranes signaled the city's constant evolution. "Everything I've built, Terraform, my position at Global Green, even reacquiring Horizon, it's not about the past. It's about creating a future where no one's vision gets overshadowed." The night air carried the scent of possibility, of new foundations, waiting to be laid. Priya Sharma, once the silent architect behind another's success, now stood illuminated in her own light, designing not just buildings, but a legacy entirely her own.